What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Thai Life Podcast. I'm your host, Min Thai. Today, we have an awesome, fun guest for y'all. This guy right here, man, he inspired me from day one since I started content creating. I stumbled upon his video, and the fact that as white as he is more Asian than me at most of the videos that he put out, especially you are known for Word of the Day. Ladies and gentlemen, my friend Phúc Mập. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Mintai, for having me on. I've been seeing the Thai Life podcast on here, wanted to join in, and well, happy I was invited to be on here. So hopefully we have a good chat.
How are you, man? So I see you doing all kind of stuff like you're traveling all over the world. Where are you at right now?
Currently, I'm at my wife's family's place in Kentucky. I just left Florida. I was emceeing a festival in Florida. And then right before that, I was the wedding MC for a Vietnamese couple up in Virginia. So I've been just bouncing back and forth. I was in California twice this year, Florida 3 times this year, the DMV 2 times this year. So all over the place.
You are one busy man. Before we get deep into what you're doing right now or what you just did, tell us a little bit, how did Phúc Mập develop? Like, how do you get the name Phúc Mập? What is your original name? Where did you originally start it from? And sao mà biết nói tiếng Việt giỏi quá vậy?
All right. Well, let's break it down. I'll try to summarize this as cleanly as possible. Hello, everyone. My name is Hurley, which is my English name, but better known as Phúc Map in Vietnam and in the Vietnamese circles. Now, I moved to Vietnam in 2014 to teach English. That was because after I graduated college, I did the next best thing and I got a job in a bar. And at first, I thought the party life would be great, but after a few years, became a very toxic environment. So I figured, what way can I move to a different country that looks different than me, sounds different from me, and just has a whole different way of life in me, and actually work over there, not be a backpacker, but actually have a job as an expat. So I found Vietnam was a very good option to teach English, and I went over there and started teaching in 2014. And a buddy of mine, he had chosen the name Phúc Bao because he liked how it sounded. So we were actually on a trip to the Dale Hải Vân. Are you familiar with the Hải Vân Pass?
Yeah, Đèo Hải Vân is the way to tới Huế. Like if you go from Da Nang to Huế, you have to go past Đèo Hải Vân. And it used to be known for the most dangerous hill in Vietnam.
It gets very foggy. It can be dangerous, but I've done it many times. This was the first time back around 2014, 2015. And it had to be 2015 because it was that. So anyways, a lady, she said, what's your name? And my friend, he said, I'm Phúc Bảo. She said, Phúc Bảo, huh? This must be Phúc Béo. I said, I guess so. Okay, Phúc Béo is my name. And then when I trở về Sài Gòn, everybody said, no, Phúc Mập, Mập dễ thương hơn. Nhưng mà lúc đó không biết nói tiếng Việt nhiều. I didn't know a lot of Vietnamese. I just knew like tôi đẹp trai, like just the basic funny catchphrases. And then I met my wife in 2015. We started dating in 2016. And, theo văn hóa của Việt Nam and Vietnamese culture, you meet the family very quickly. And I met her mother, my future mother-in-law, who doesn't speak any English. And I called her Jay. I said, chào Jay, thinking I'm showing off my Vietnamese when really I'm just being yo you in. So that was kind of the spark to get a private tutor and to spend every week from 2016 to the beginning of 2019 just studying Vietnamese. And my tutor is very, very intelligent. She speaks fluent Vietnamese, obviously, fluent English, and she speaks a good bit of Chinese, so she can break down the Từ Han Viet for me and explain why everything has the root that it does, from Từ Han Viet, Chinese root words, to Từ Thôn Viet, Vietnamese root words, and gave me a really deep understanding. So when I started my YouTube channel in 2019, my wife's encouragement, even though I left her very embarrassed, I wasn't aware that my Vietnamese was any good. I knew Vietnamese, but I didn't think it was that good. And then I went out and started talking to everybody. And when I put the videos out, people understood it. And, they had a lot of comments, a lot of things to say about my Vietnamese. And like you said, oh, nói tiếng Việt giỏi quá, even though that's a common compliment in Vietnam. But yeah, and then from there, the last 6 years has just been grinding. Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, and traveling around being an MC.
I know how that life is all about. You know, the reason why we always say Phúc nói tiếng Việt giỏi, tại vì trong người Việt, we don't see a lot of white people who speak Vietnamese frequently in any videos. So Phúc kind of set the tone for like, hey, I'm white and I can learn how to speak Vietnamese. And us Vietnamese really like admire that. The fact that you
that.
try to learn our language. So during the process of learning the language, do you find any difficulty like at time where you just feel like I have to force myself to speak so I can be more fluent?
I still find difficulty to this day. In fact, my mother-in-law, the original G from the story, she will still criticize my tones and correct me on the regular. And it's an ongoing journey. I'll say that. And when people say, "Wow, you're fluent," I say, I'm not fluent, but I work towards that every day. And with the Vietnamese word of the day and teaching Vietnamese on my Patreon, I find that it makes me dive deeper into the language and get a deeper understanding of why things are the way they are and share them from góc nhìn của một người Mỹ, the American perspective.
So in that sense, what is your perspective since you have lived in Vietnam long enough and your wife is also Vietnamese, your mother-in-law is Vietnamese? I mean, what have you learned about the culture and you appreciate about it?
Man, I think it really comes down to the people. And I don't just say this because I've lived there for so long and my wife's Vietnamese, but even before I met my wife, I said to myself, I don't think I'm going to leave this place. Everyone is so friendly and they want to have conversations and they're genuinely interested in where I come from and why I came to their country and what's my favorite food and what do I think of Vietnamese girls. Everybody always wants to chat. And, in Saigon, we have about 10 million people. So that leaves room for new conversations every day. So being a social person myself, that just opened a door for me where, yeah, working in the bar, I get to talk to people, but eventually you realize those are just alcoholics who are regulars. And then those conversations get forgotten the next night and so on and so forth. Whereas these are more genuine conversations. And to compare, I've traveled all over East Asia. And when I went to Japan, which was one of the first countries I visited after moving over there, I go to Japan, I'm trying to talk to people in Tokyo, and they would just turn away and walk away. And it's not that they were not friendly, they were just embarrassed to practice their English, or they were worried about a foreigner with tattoos, whatever it might be. But I noticed such a difference in Japan and Korea and Indonesia with the locals and how they treated foreigners versus Vietnam.
Wow. And when you start embracing the Vietnamese culture, now tell me about your experience when you start realizing people are starting to speak with you in Vietnamese in response and they start to see you on this YouTube phenomenon where this dude is walking around showing our culture and he's speaking Vietnamese. What is that feeling like, bro?
To me, it never gets old. I enjoy it. This last couple of years, we might get into this later, but in the first 8 years, I would only leave Vietnam once a year. If that, a couple of years, I didn't even come back to America. And since 2022, I've started to get more jobs in America. So it's afforded me the opportunity to spend more time close to family here, have a reason to be here, and also afforded me the opportunity to travel around the Vietnamese community throughout America. I mean, in the last 3 years, I've been to California 2 times. I've been to Texas. I've been to Vietnamese communities in Florida and Georgia and South Carolina, Tennessee, Chicago, Kentucky, Maryland, Virginia, just all over Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi. Like I've gone to either restaurants, nail salons, or both in all these states over the last few years. And I got to be honest, the reception is the same as in Vietnam. I think it's just the Vietnamese people and the culture. Where I walked in to a nail salon in the middle of Georgia. I was just getting off the the interstate to use the restroom. I see a nail salon. I said, người Việt đó. So I went in there, and the guy, he stands up off the couch, and he's like, yo, Phúc Mâp, what you doing here? Well, welcome to my nail salon. I'm like, hey, what's going on, man? Khỏe. And that's the reception that I've received all over the country. And to me, it's just awesome that my videos have made enough of an impact, and the general outlook is positive. You know, I haven't really met anti-fans out on the street yet. I'm sure they're lying in the shadows somewhere, but the overall outlook from all those states, whether in Houston or Garden Grove, even the nail supply in Chicago, they're like, yo, Phúc Mâp, what are you doing in Chicago, man? Like, it's just always a good, welcoming feeling meeting Vietnamese abroad.
Well, you are to us. You're so big. Like you're like our Asian white brother, man. Like I mentioned
That's
earlier,
why I'm
you
Phúc
know.
Mâp, man. I'm big.
Yeah,
I'm fat.
man. It's you know when you start living in Vietnam, I saw some of your video when you trying to eat different type of food. So what have you tried so far, and what have you like, love, and dislike?
Okay. Let's go down that rabbit hole.
We
Because
do.
rabbit was one of the first things I had. The restaurant by my house had it.
Thiệt
But,
không? Đúng vậy á hả?
Đúng rồi. So, nói thật là Phúc đã ăn gần hầu hết món ăn ở Việt Nam. I've eaten almost everything. And some I wouldn't want to share publicly, but other ones, you know, I'm happy to share. So, favorite dish, we'll get that out of the way. Bún bò Huế. I love bún bò Huế, whether in Saigon or Huế. I mean, I think it tastes better in Saigon, but, you know, they're both good. And then when I first started the channel, I said, what can I do to stand out? I can eat anything. And that's how I was going to start the channel, speaking Vietnamese with locals and eating the craziest things, but doing it in a way that no one else did. For example, I went down to Mỹ Tho, down in the Mekong Delta, went by myself, and I found a snake farm. And I was like, ooh, I'm going to eat snake and make a video. So I asked the lady in my broken Vietnamese if she can give me a live snake to hold up in the air while I'm eating snake. She's like, yeah, but you got to do it in the kitchen because there's customers out there. I said, all right, cool. So one of my first videos, I had the non la, I have con ran sam, and then thịt ran on my plate. So I'm just eating and talking about it, but no real objective. Just, hey, look at me, look what I'm doing. And then, are you familiar with con đuống dừa, coconut worms?
Con đuống dừa, cái con worm mà nó bự bự lắm phải không?
Đúng rồi.
I never had it before.
You got to try it with me sometime. I said, you know, people eat these. I wouldn't be the first foreigner to eat them, but I could not find a video of someone letting it bite their lip because they got those big pinchers for getting through the coconut bark.
Yes.
So one of my first videos, I took it and I put it up and it bit my lip. And it's like a movie. You're stretching the lip out trying to get it off. So I became sort of like the ambassador of coconut worms because every time there's a new foreigner, for example, like Peter Bowie, he's really big on TikTok. I believe he's from Texas. He was out there with Sup Dog, and I got him to eat coconut worms. UFC lightweight Benil Dariush, he came to my gym. I got him to eat coconut worms for the first time with me. And Real Tarzan, who's a creator who goes and plays with animals and cobras and things all over the world, I got him to eat them for the first time. So I'm like the ambassador of coconut worms.
That is so awesome how like you set that trend because, you know, at one moment that was going viral. Like eating that coconut worm was a big thing. I see all over on like YouTube.
So like I said, I wanted to do everything that I could do that was over the top, but bring it a step further. And the last video before my first viral hit, I wanted to eat mam tom, you know, but that's nothing. Vietnamese love mam tom. Yeah, of course, foreigners think it's thui, but it's, you know, it's nothing special. So what I did, I said, you know what? I'm going to drink a whole bowl of mam tom right now. And I just took the whole chan and just almost threw up. But, you know, I wanted to take it to the next level. And that's how the channel started. And then again, my first viral video was a little over the top too. So just went from there.
That is amazing. I am so blessed that I am talking to you tonight, man. It's like I am watching you for 1 minute, like long time. And here you are sharing your story. We are so blessed. If you guys are tuning in, this is Phúc Mập right here, bro.
Thank you, brother. I
So,
appreciate it. But let me share. In Vietnamese we say "có qua, có lại," reciprocity. So the same thing with you and Nail Dad Studio and Adrian down in Louisiana. Now you guys kind of helped to inspire me to do some nail content while I was in America. I see your videos and I say, "Oh, I'm going to do some nail skits too. I got this. All right." So appreciate it as well.
thank you, man.
Reciprocity.
Thank you. Well, we learn from each other, and that's what true content creator are doing.
Mm-hmm.
How do you met your wife?
Well, in Vietnamese, we say định mệnh, it's destiny. That's what I believe because I got put into a language center in Tân Bình up at the airport.
Okay.
And that determined where I was going to live and spend my time. In fact, I worked there like the whole 8 years that I was in Vietnam, where I'm like, okay, I'm teaching English in Tân Bình. Well, it just so happens my wife grew up around the corner, down the street, walking distance from my language center. We had some mutual friends. They invited us out to Nhau. And then we met up. I got that Facebook. I slid in the DMs and we were dating like 2 weeks later.
Right, like you never been to karaoke ôm lần nào, right?
No. Bia ôm, cà phê ôm, karaoke ôm. Chưa bao giờ. Phúc không chơi gái. I don't play like that.
Vậy thì rất là tốt rồi. Rất là less problem, less money.
Nói thiệt là vợ của Phúc nói không có người vợ Việt nào mà cho phép chồng đi về Việt Nam một mình ngoài vợ của Phúc. She will let me go back to Vietnam by myself, make my videos, stay there for weeks because she trusts me and she know I'm not a be ôm guy even if I'm độc thân.
Oh, funny. Phúc, it seems like you travel a lot, and I'm assuming you have been all over Vietnam.
Yes, sir.
Now, how is your ear getting used to speaking or listening to different dialect of the Vietnamese?
Personally, I look at it as sort of like a field trip, like an extracurricular activity. Of course, I have to focus on the Southern dialect, giọng miền Nam, the most. But I love to go up to miền Bắc and listen to giọng Bắc and then try to decipher what everybody's saying. It's like instead of quẹo phải, rẽ phải. Instead of
a lot of Z,
đẹp,
a lot of Z in the back, right?
Mm-hmm. And that's the quick way to pick it out. If I hear z, I'm like, người miền Bắc đúng không?
Đúng.
And I will try to switch my voice, đổi giọng, and nói chuyện giống như người Bắc, kỳ Phúc lên miền Bắc. I try to, it sounds like I'm almost making fun of them, but no, I'm trying to like, okay, let me test myself. Let me see how quickly I can switch back and forth. Yeah, and unfortunately and fortunately, the way I learned Vietnamese was half and half because I live on Dung Pham Văn Hai. Pham Văn Hai is very famous for having a lot of người Bắc. So I heard a lot of người Bắc. And then my wife's family, they come from the north, Bắc Nam Tu, and she was born in Saigon. So there's a mix in the family as well. And then my tutor was from the south. So a lot of things that I was hearing in the south, I didn't even know. For example, they say, có vợ chưa? I said, có vợ chưa? Like, have I been dirty yet? Yeah. They said, no, có vợ chưa? Oh, you mean vợ. How thing
yeah,
chưa?
Yeah.
I'm not, I missed that part of the lesson where it's like, they say yeah instead of v. And I learned the v for everything. So, có vui không? Vui, like vui, like under what? Vui? Huh? That's how? Like, so I was kind of in the middle. And I enjoy traveling to the different regions and trying to decipher. But I will say, miền Tây rất là khó. They speak so like nhẹ nhàng on their pronunciation. After spending some time in the miền Tây, I'm like, that one's a little bit hard, Người miền Bắc they nói rất là nhanh nhưng mà rất là đúng, rất là chuẩn. So that's easier to pick out. But the South is very nhẹ nhàng.
What about Huế?
Huế? It's a Demo Rua.
Hey, that was good. That was good.
That's my example. I've been to Huế maybe 3 times, and I haven't met anyone that was very hard to listen to. I know the traditional, like you see those videos where you don't know what everybody's saying, but I've always had an okay time understanding in Hui, because here's the secret. It's not about understanding every word. It's about being able to get the context in what's being asked or what's being said. And once you grasp that and realize that you're not perfect, you're more comfortable, you get the idea, you answer appropriately, and then you move on with the conversation.
People always find it mind blowing when they realize that one word can mean multiple things just depending on the sign, the symbols.
Mm-hmm.
What was your thought process like when you realized that?
I always enjoy sharing this story. Another one with the mother-in-law. True story. My wife, she had a Vietnamese restaurant. Well, it's in Vietnam, but Wan Nhao out
Ooh,
in
one
in
yow's.
Tân Bình. So that was how I helped chửi thế, help nói bậy. That's where I got all that from. I used to sit there in 2017, 2018, around the time we got married. And one night, her family's all in there. They're all at one table. And her mom asked me, said, "Oh, con đi đâu vậy? Where are you going?" And I had to work early in the morning. And true story, I said, "Oh, con đi ngu." She said, "Cái gì?" "Yeah, con đi ngu." Instead of con đi ngủ, because my tones just get flipped all over. And the whole table just looked at me. They weren't mad. They knew I messed up, but they're like, "Did he really just say con đi ngu to his mother-in-law?" It's going to be a great relationship for life.
So technically, what Phúc Mập just call his mother is was it a stupid hoe?
Yeah, stupid slut,
But what he meant to
kept it.
say is that he's gonna go to sleep. That's what he meant.
Same words, different tones. That's my go-to example because it was a true story. And, she still brings it up to this day.
Well, a lot of Vietnamese, they use that as a joke also. They use these word jokes. So do you
Oh, yeah.
understand when you watch Vietnamese TV shows now, Phúc?
I think I'm pretty decent with it. I don't know if I told you, but I've been on quite a few TV shows. I mean, definitely over 10. I don't know how many I've been on, but I've been on some big shows. And if I didn't get the experience of YouTube and public speaking, it would have been a lot of pressure. But by the last one I did was Hang A Một Đêm. Have you ever heard of that one?
No, but I'm gonna definitely check it out.
Hang A Một Đêm is, they take like 6 of the most influential Vietnamese from Trường Yang to Kieu Minh Tuan,
Oh
everybody
wow.
that's influential in one aspect or another. And then they have to do challenges with contestants.
Oh.
And myself, I was one of the first foreigners to be invited on the show. They've never brought foreigners on the show. So I knew, I had just flown back to America and I got the invite. My wife's like, "You have to go. That's my favorite show. Like, you got to be on that." So I flew back by myself to do the show. And I mean, at all times, we have 100 cameras on us, from
Wow.
security cameras in the tent where we're sleeping to camera guys on the side to camera guys in your face, like the most pressure. And there's no script. It's all reality TV. It's like The Amazing Race mixed with Survivor. We got to camp outside if we lost the challenge. We had to go kayaking for flags, like all kinds of crazy stuff. And by the time I finished with that show, which is the last show I've done up to this point, I just, like I said, you get the context, you know what's going on, you make mistakes, no big deal, and you have fun with it,
That's awesome, dude. Man, I didn't know you were in all of that. And the cool
Yep.
part is like your wife's been such a big support system through your journey of a content creator. And now, do you have any kids by any chance?
Yes, sir. Hai đứa, but một đứa là con chó. So I would always use that joke when the bà già Việt Nam hỏi, có con chưa? I say, có một đứa rồi, 2 tuổi. And it'd be con chó, a picture of the puppy. And they're like, "Oh, trời ơi." But yeah, our little guy, he just turned 19 months today.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you, sir. It's definitely life-changing.
Người Việt Nam always young, we love to joke around. I'm sure you know that by now, right? We always have to throw some kind of joke as a friendly, just a conversation. So how you adapt those kind of stuff? Like when you around the Vietnamese people, you just kind of throw jokes around them.
I have to. I have to, especially because I have two brother-in-laws who are older than me. So I have to be respectful to them, and I also have to put up with it when they chop me, when they make jokes. Because my wife's con, she's the youngest in the family, so all the in-laws are my elders. I can never do the Tao Mai, but I have to listen to Tao Mai from
Oh
them.
wow.
Like and we lived in the same house for years, so it's like, yeah, definitely used to it. In fact, I was on a TV show called Yai Ma Kỳ Tai with MC Queen Lin, and it
Wow.
threw me off, but I knew what he was saying. He was talking about my chicken video where I was carrying my chicken, and he said, "Phúc có thích gà 45 kg không?" And I'm like, this is on TV. I said, "No, không thích gà bóng đỏ. No, không thích gì hết." But I hear that kind of joking on TV. My wife's right there behind the stage. He's like, "Oh, you like prostitutes?" I'm like, "No, I don't mess with the red fingered girls. No."
Dang. So you luckily you able to understand, catch that. One wrong answer. Next thing you know, it's like, oh, everybody just heard what you say.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. But I've just over time, just picked up more and more. I mean, there's still plenty I have, no understanding of, but that's the whole fun with it. You take martial arts, for example, and I'm not using myself as example of this, but with martial arts, everybody wants to be a black belt. But if you talk to the black belts, they say the best part of that was going through the belts and learning everything to get there. And even though they have their black belt, they're not done. They're always learning. So the same thing with the language. Part of me doesn't want to ever be like 100% fluent. Like part of me wants to keep learning and finding out things along the way and enjoying the journey of learning through it.
That is so cool, man. Hey, folk, so you started doing all of this MC stuff, right? And for weddings, a Vietnamese event, I got to hear more about,
Boxing.
yeah, for boxing. I got to hear more about how do you get yourself into doing this MC event? And what was that experience like when you first started doing a Vietnamese MC event, knowing that you have to speak Vietnamese?
Try to think back to my first one. I did two weddings for friends, and lúc đó tiếng Việt của Phúc khá là dở. It was very
Mm.
bad, but they asked me to do it. It was free. It wasn't a hired job. 2017, around that time. But the first one I remember, 2019, I had just gone viral, and a company was doing a team building event in Dalat.
Hmm.
And they put me on stage in front of 1,000 people, some foreigners, mostly Vietnamese, and I had to switch back and forth, no script. And after that, the pressure is just gone. So from there, my gym, I trained at a mixed martial arts gym pretty much the whole time I was in Vietnam. And I always give the example where it's like, they say those who can't play, they have to coach. Well, my coaches saw me and they said, this guy's never going to be a pro fighter. Hey, why don't you be the commentator? Sure, that works. So they asked me to be the commentator for the boxing events. And I actually
What?
got to be the commentator for the first WBA Asia Boxing Championship in Vietnam.
Wow.
And my buddy, he won the heavyweight championship that night too. So it was really an honor to be that guy and also to announce that my friend won in the main event, the heavyweight championship. So it just went full circle to where, oh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. And then once I did those events, I started getting booked for more weddings, and especially stateside. Now that my Instagram's gotten bigger, I get a lot of requests. Not everybody agrees with my price, which is fine. But, when I get to go out there, it's so touching because they're really nervous about their wedding. I'm just cool, calm, and collected and say, don't worry, I got this. I'll be dropping jokes, keeping everybody on both sides of the aisle happy because some people speak English, some people only speak Vietnamese. I got you, don't worry. And I mean, unless they're completely lying to me, I've gotten good feedback on all the weddings I've done so far. So
How did they book with you?
just through Instagram. I'll put it at my email on some videos, so I might get some through email, but you'd be surprised. Like this year, I've gotten requests for Cancun, Colorado, Vancouver, San Francisco, Tampa, a couple in the DMV, about 6 in Vietnam. I'm hoping to get back to do those.
Wow.
Um, Quite a few. Not all of them accepted and agreed and everything, but they reached out to begin with. So
And that's
it's
the
looking
start.
good for the next couple years. Yeah.
So, do you find the culture of Vietnam and US different now that you have seen both sides? Like, have you ever like processed your mind like, wow, this is different. Wow, this like how why can't we do certain things like that? What is the work ethics like when you have lived in both world?
Yeah, it's night and day. I will say, Vietnamese are very hardworking, but also enjoy the fruits of their labor. And I say that by, it seems that even though some Vietnamese don't make a lot of money in Vietnam, they still make it a point to go out with their friends and have a drink and, food and a drink after work and have that time. Vietnamese, they don't have the concept of the 40-hour work week per se. A lot of Vietnamese will work 7 days a week, 8 to 12 hour shifts a day, and you ask them, when are you going to retire? They say, what do you mean retire? I'm just going to keep working. Whereas in America, I feel like people are very entitled and they feel like, oh, well, that's not my job, some duty at their work, or, I deserve my PTO, or I deserve to have my retirement at this age. I feel like there's a lot of entitlement in America, whereas in Vietnam, people, they work because they got to support their family. They know what they have to do it. And I'm not saying there's not hardworking people in America, but I mean, even in the nail salons here, I see nail techs who won't take a day off. I mean, it's 7 days a week, every single day. They're offered days off, but they won't take the day off because all they know is to work, provide for their family here. And even, a lot of them will send money back to Vietnam for their family there as well.
Do your wife still send money back? Like, is your wife still in Vietnam or is she living in USA?
No, she's in the U.S. for now, so she's about to be a citizen.
Oh,
She's managed to
congratulations.
spend 6 months. Thank you. 6 months out of every year she's been here in America, which is a requirement for the green card and then to get citizenship. Um, she would definitely send money back for her sister, but her parents actually live here, and her brother-in-laws live here. So her sister, she'll send some money back. I gotta pay her because she handles my accounts over there while I'm not there. So, we'll help her out there. But yeah, just the whole family, all the way up to my mother-in-law. Like they work.
Yeah.
That's what they do, man. They work.
It seems like a lot of things happen for you when you start living in Vietnam. It seems like that's where your career kind of takes off. If you don't mind sharing us a glimpse of who is Phúc Mập before you went to Vietnam, like what was that life about, and who are you before and life like for you?
Well, luckily I've had time to summarize this, in a story format. Not to get off topic, but I'm actually writing a book right now, and it talks about my life before and how I got to Vietnam. But instead of just doing the time in Vietnam, I've actually decided to write it about my experience in the nail salon here in America. So we'll get into that a little bit later. But basically, um, for me, going into high school, everything was like set where it's like, okay, well, I'm going to go to high school. I might meet my future wife here, but probably in college. Then I'll go to a local, Florida university. I'll meet my wife by there. I'll be married by the time I get out of college, have kids the next couple of years, have a job, and that's it. Like I just had that traditional mindset of the white picket fence, and that's what my life's going to be. But when I graduated college, I did legal studies in criminal justice, and at the end I didn't want to be a lawyer anymore. Legal studies and legal writing is boring. And I shadowed some lawyers and I said, this is really boring. I don't want to be a lawyer, but I just spent 4 years studying this. So what do I do now? And then, having partied quite a bit in college, I had the opportunity through my jujitsu school to work downtown Orlando because it seemed all the MMA gyms had their people working at all the bars in downtown Orlando. I said, great, the party doesn't have to stop. So I worked in, multiple bars, different days of the week, and had a great time, but realized that, hey, this is going to really affect me in the long run. And in fact, I had a wiser old friend sitting at the door. I was checking IDs and he's having a talk with me. He's like, man, you didn't been down here like 4 or 5 years. You're out of college. Like, you're going to close your eyes and wake up one day in about 20 years and realize that you're an alcoholic and you still work in a bar and you did nothing with your life. And that just really hit home where I was like, dang. Yeah, I mean, when you say it like that, I guess I do need to get out of here. I had a friend who was, working in a bar and got stabbed and died down there. And it was just an environment that I knew did not have a good ending. So I looked at opportunities to teach abroad, and Spain and Italy, Japan, Korea, everything was an option, but Southeast Asia seemed like the best spot. So yes, before coming to Vietnam, I worked in a bar, and that goes with taking shots with your friends and staying out late afterwards, drinking with the other bartenders. And yeah, I am very happy that moving to Vietnam changed the direction of my life. It gave, because when I moved to Vietnam, I quit drinking. I didn't drink the first 2 years in Vietnam. I drank a little bit after that, but then my wife doesn't drink. So I quit for another 2 years. Then I drank a little bit at the beginning of the channel, got some videos like doing breweries and stuff. And then now I haven't drank in almost 2 years because it's like my wife doesn't drink. So it's kind of weird just to sit there and drink by myself.
Wow. That is so, when I hear your stories, just to see your life from a bartender, and who know, like that you were going to be this big content creator guy that speaks Vietnamese. I mean, you never thought about that, didn't you?
Well, to be honest with you, I did have a YouTube channel working in the bar and it focused on drunk people. But I realized, oh, well, maybe a lawsuit could be in hand if I keep filming these drunk people passed out on the side of the road. In fact, I had I had a couple. They weren't a couple. They were a random hookup. I had a zoomed in video of them just basically making love on the side of the street. And then when I posted it, my buddy's like, yo, that's my professor at the local community college. She wants you to take that down. I was like, oh, first lawsuit in order. And then I would film fights, and I actually got chased from different group fights because they look over and there's just this guy like laughing and filming them, getting my content. So I started the content creation process early, but I started in a niche that was going to be very dangerous for my way of life. So I did not imagine that I would be speaking Vietnamese. In fact, in Orlando, I lived right next to Little Saigon. And I didn't know it was Little Saigon. I just thought it was the Asian part of town, the Chinatown. And then I went to Vietnam and I come back the first time and I go that area and I go, wait a minute. These are all Vietnamese letters. What is this? I had no idea. And now going back is a treat because I go around with my little brother. I review them, talk to everybody, and have a great time. So,
How do you share all of this experience with your family now?
uh, I love to bring them out. I've brought my mom to a festival before, and we get stopped, and I got to get pictures with people and everything. And I'm on stage. My dad. I have a crazy story for you. And again, this is destiny.
Destiny.
My dad rides his bike every day, right? He lives in Daytona Beach, Florida. So he rides his bike every day, and he tells me on the phone, he's like, man, I pass this Vietnamese guy every day. I was like, Dad, how you know he's Vietnamese? He goes, I just know. I go, Dad, Asians can't even tell Asians apart. I know you can't tell this guy's Vietnamese. You're just saying that because you think he knows me. And one day I was actually in Virginia, D.C. area for one of the weddings. He calls me. He's like, Brandon, sorry, my first name's Brandon. My last name's Hurley. He goes, Brandon, I stopped and I talked to him. I got him right here. You talk to him. And I'm expecting like this guy to start speaking Chinese or something. But he puts him on the phone and the guy's Vietnamese. Okay, random, but it worked out. So I'm having a conversation in Vietnamese. And do you know where he lived in Vietnam?
No.
Pham Văn Hai, my street in Saigon.
Oh
He
my
used to live on
God.
Pham Văn Hai. I said, what? This, I go and tell my dad, I live in Saigon. I live in a city with 10 million people. And he meets a guy on the sidewalk that lived on my street in Saigon. I'm like, that is insane.
Your dad, have you ever thought about taking your family to Vietnam? and just like show them
Yes.
this like
Yes.
awesome country that you experience?
I was set to. My little brother actually did come over in 2018, and I took him everywhere. Went to Saigon, obviously. Went to we started in Hoi An. We did Da Nang. We did the Deo Hai Van to Hue. And then we went from Hue and we drove all the way to Laos and then back over to Phom Nha. And then we went to Hanoi. And then we went to Cat Ba and then saw Ha Long Bay and everything. He loved it. 3 weeks, and it was, awesome experience. But when I was getting ready to bring my mom over, my parents are separated, but when I was getting ready to bring her over, COVID happened and it just threw everything off, So, um, my dad's not in the best health, which is another reason I want to spend more time in America. But, I think he would love it more than all of them because, he's always been interested in history and he'd love to see the famous sites and everything. And yeah, so eventually I can hopefully get him and my mom over there.
I'm excited to hear more about your book that you mentioned earlier. You have like a releasing date that that you can give us a
No,
glimpse.
no, no. I've just been writing it. But it's the whole story's done. It's not fiction. It's not anything. I just have to put it in order. And speaking to you about it makes more sense because you've worked in the nail salon for how long now, Mintai?
I've been in the nail industry over 20 years. I started at the age of 18,
Okay.
and my whole family owns salon businesses. So
Okay.
tell me, could you say
So
you
you're well
mentioned?
aware.
So you mentioned something about like you were involved in the nail salon. To like talk to us about that. Like what were you doing that you were involved in the nail salon?
So when we first came back to America, I was making regular trips back to Vietnam for TV shows. I worked with Netflix, Chinsu, just different TV shows and sponsorships. But it was good to come back here. And then I thought we would be in Florida most of the time, but it turns out my brother-in-law in Kentucky, he has a nail salon, had two at one point, and he's opening a Vietnamese restaurant. And he said, hey, while you guys are in America, can you come up here and stay with us? I said, I didn't come back to America to stay in Kentucky, but I'll come visit. I was like, what am I going to do? He's like, because my wife, she studied nails in Vietnam. I don't know if you know, but a lot of Vietnamese do nails.
Yes.
So she went to a university over there and she was ready to go. And I was like, great, she's going to work. Well, what am I going to do? There's no Vietnamese restaurants around you. Like, I have nothing to film. And he's like, you have to translate for my nail techs. I need you to talk to the landlord, the lawyer, the accountant, the cable, all the credit cards, everything. And then you just be my backup guy. And then you can edit and film and everything while you're in the nail salon. I said, all right. And he said, I'll warn you though, Vietnamese here are a lot different than Vietnamese in Vietnam. I said, what do you mean? He's like, well, first off, Vietnamese here love to gamble because in Vietnam, Vietnamese are not allowed to gamble. It's against the
Correct.
law for citizens. Whereas here, whoo, there's a couple casinos and a short drive. And I
That's where
found
they
out
get the
firsthand.
buffet.
Yes. So as soon as we start working, I'm somebody that's very optimistic, very thick cook about people, about life. And I give everybody a good chance when I meet them. Everybody was nice. Most of them didn't even know my channel or anything. They just nail techs who've been here 20 years and just work in a small town in Kentucky. And then as I start to realize, more about these people, I drove a guy to buy a car, for example, in Louisville. And his wife, he had two kids with a lady in Vietnam, but he would go back, get her pregnant, and then come back here, and then go back, get her pregnant, come back here.
Dang.
She's about to come over. And, he's telling me his story in this 2-hour drive to get his car. And he's like, I used to have a nail salon and a restaurant and a house and a boat. And then I gambled it all away. In fact, I lost $500,000 in one night. I'm like, dang, dude, what? I'd be happy to make that in a year. You lost it in one night.
They
What
go
the
hard.
heck? And yeah. And so now he worked in my brother's nail salon. Well, I didn't know his whole history, but it turns out when that lady came here, she started working in the nail salon. Everything was golden. And I'm like, great, this guy's going to settle down, get serious about his family. He's got his kids here and everything. And then he got strung out on meth. And he comes in the nail salon one night and the kids are in there with her. He throws the car seat. He's all high and everything. And then he just dipped out. And then he comes back and gets her. They switched to another nail salon. And then he broke in there and broke all their cameras and stole all their stuff. And I'm like, dang, okay, well, one off, no big deal. And then another guy, he wins 100,000 roughly at the casino, walks in and quits the next day, gambles it all away in a couple days, comes back begging for his job, and did the same thing the next year. And then another guy, he gets $150,000 settlement from a car accident. I helped him do the paperwork. I know how much he got. And then the World Cup comes on and he loses 30,000 in the first couple days. I'm like, what is going on? And it's just one story after another. For the last 3 years, on and off of being here, I have enough stories to fill this book. And we're to the point now where, even and then it came down to issues with the state board. I'm sure you've had issues with the state board.
I'm not making up these stories when I'm telling y'all.
Yes. They were actually sued in Kentucky for being discriminatory against Vietnamese. California Vietnamese news channels were out here interviewing salon owners, and they lost. And they have to offer the test in Vietnamese. They have to have a Vietnamese salon or a salon owner on the board and a regular citizen on the board, because they were overfining salons, but they weren't shutting them down. They're just saying, oh, $12,000. But it's that serious, but you don't shut them down? And they were just literally extorting salons. They say, oh, somebody got up and walked out. I go, okay, well, that's somebody's aunt or uncle. She doesn't want anything to do with this because immigration, whatever else. And you're going to say, oh, a Nailtech ran and didn't provide their license. Like craziest stuff. But they got sued and they lost. So just in the time that I've been around the salon, I have enough for a whole book. And it was going to be about my time in Vietnam. It will cover some of that. But I really need to get this out. And I want to call it something like White Boy in the Nail Salon. And it will be in English and Vietnamese. So Vietnamese in Vietnam can see how the culture is here for some, not all nail techs. And Vietnamese here can go, yeah, no, it's not wrong.
Not at all. Because I'm telling you, like when you live and work in the nail salon, you will see the things and hear the things that you are shocked about. And
yes.
And people are thinking like, oh, these are just make-up story. No, we are dealing with human beings. They have problem, and we hear the problem. Tell me about being a content creator, folks. I know a lot of time people, I'm sorry, man.
I'm positive. Switch to a more positive subject. I agree.
Well, we can talk about any subject, because I only have you short, and I know your time is very, very valuable. And I know a lot of time, folk, we put out the final product, and, there's pros and the cons, haters, whatever you want to call it. But the life of a content creator is a lot of work, especially you have a kid, a family, things to work. You got bills to pay. I mean, people don't see that side where we really have to be creative, continue to produce. And sometimes our mind's not even present where we're at. We're thinking about something in the back. I mean, do you go through that sometimes?
Preparing nonstop. And sometimes, I question myself doing it, but in the end, I realize like this is what I love to do. Because it is always about the next video, the next idea. And when I started, I used to put so much effort into the script, the filming, the angles, the mic, everything. And even though I didn't know much about it back then, you can see the amateur level versus more professional level 6 years later. But I used to put so much into it. And then, a content creator buddy of mine over there, he said, how can we keep this going for a long time? Sure, the first couple of years, whatever. But how can we get the longevity of our channels? And that's really what I've focused on the last couple of years, is getting content that I can reproduce, continually do, but still keep it fresh and new for the audience, still provide value for the viewer. So any trip I take, whether it's to MC a wedding, I go the day before and I go around and film. The next weekend, I have a video coming out from Eden Center the day before the wedding. And then The week after, I have a video from Washington, D.C., the day after the wedding. So everything, I don't travel for vacation. I can't tell you the last time I've taken a vacation. I travel, but it's always,
For
well, I got to
content.
film something here. I got to film something there, and it makes it even more difficult because in the beginning, my wife and I decided that she would not be a part of my channel on camera because Vietnamese are very critical of the wives of celebrities. And I'm not saying I'm a celebrity, but I'm well known in the Vietnamese community. And she just didn't want that pressure. She doesn't care to be famous. She doesn't post selfies of her own on her social media. So she said, it's going to be better if I'm just not a part of it, because if I do, then I got to do all your videos. If I only do a couple, I'm just going to get criticized for this or that, whatever. It's better if I don't. So if you type in on Google right now, Phúc Mâp, one of the number one search queries is Phúc Mâp wife. And it's been that way since the beginning because everybody wants to know. But she doesn't want to be famous. I'm perfectly fine with her not being on the channel. I'm not going to milk her for views, for lack of a better word. There are some creators who really not take advantage, but take advantage of the fact, that they can put their wife out there and use them to get views. You know what I mean? And what's worse, this is what makes it even worse, is my son. I told her in the beginning, I do not want him on my channel. I do not want to use my baby and then eventually my son to get views, because you can watch these video essays and documentaries of kids who just got strung out on drugs, put in rehab and everything because they were child stars on Nickelodeon, everything. It's so sad to watch. And they didn't choose that. They were thrown into that by their parents. It doesn't happen to all of them, but it happens to a lot of them. And I told my wife, I don't want my kid growing up thinking he's famous, thinking he's always got a camera in his face. I don't want that. And if that means that I'm not going to go super viral for Phúc Mập, cuộc sống ở Mỹ, vợ Việt và con Lai, I don't care. I'm happy getting average views and just having an audience that enjoys what I put out. I don't mind if that means not sacrificing the privacy and the mindset of my kid and my wife, then I'm cool with that. So I guess that's how I wanted to tie up how I feel being a content creator as a husband and as a father.
I respect that because I feel the same. My wife's the same. I'm just happy that she supports what I do. So I don't need to drag her into what I'm doing, and like you mentioned, it can be a hot mess for a lot of things, a lot of reasons. What advice can you give the viewers? Something that they can live by from Phúc Mập?
Okay. I would like to say, keep an open mind and find a culture that interests you. So if you're not Vietnamese, or if you are Vietnamese, it doesn't have to be Vietnam. It can be any culture, but just a culture that interests you and that you can pursue. And then you'll get so much satisfaction by learning more about it and then going and trying something, for example, a dish that you've read about and learned about, or going and saying some phrases that you learned in the language to someone who speaks that language. Here's a great example. Chris Lewis, my buddy that I used to collaborate with in Vietnam, he's a polyglot. The guy speaks so many languages. And even though he was already fluent in Chinese, basically fluent in Vietnamese, he had this passion to learn Urdu and go to Pakistan. I don't know why. He's just some ginger kid from America, but that was his passion. So he spent 6 months studying, and he's very good at studying language. And then he went there and he became like a hero in Pakistan because he was one of the first vloggers, foreign vloggers, to come there, speak Urdu with them, and, speak positively about them. And I mean, he blew up from his Pakistan videos. And then he went to India and he spoke Hindi and did the same thing. Now, they've had people do that in India before, but it still blew up. He opened a second channel just based on this passion of his for this culture. And his second channel reached 1 million subscribers before his first channel in Vietnam did.
Wow.
Because he followed his passion. So my point is, that if you have a culture that you're interested in, it could be Italian, it could be Mexican, it could be Thai, whatever it is, just follow it, learn more about it, interact with people from there, go to different restaurants. I love when my Patreon students, which are usually husbands and wives of Vietnamese, they send me videos of them going to a Vietnamese restaurant, practicing what I taught them, just basic questions and answers. And then they get such excitement out of that because it's their first time trying this conversation with a real Vietnamese person, like that's it. I don't know. It just, to me, it feels great. I love interacting with people, and especially when Vietnamese don't know my channel or know who I am. And they're like, well, một người Thái mà biết nói tiếng Việt. Kỳ cục, huh? Like, where's this guy coming from? That's such a cool feeling. So I always recommend that. It doesn't have to be Vietnam. It can be any country, any culture. Just find a culture other than your own. Keep an open mind, and you'll learn more, not only about that culture, but about yourself.
Thank you so much, Phúc Map, man. You guys are lucky to be able to listen to Phúc dropping golden nuggets about content creating and about his life experience in Vietnam. And Phúc, before we go, can you give us one more time how they can reach you on all your platforms and how they can get service done by you to be an awesome MC at weddings, event? And do you also teach content creating, and what other things that you do as an entrepreneur?
Well, thank you again for having me, Minthai. This has been a great experience. And if anybody wants to follow my channel, I keep it simple. Phúc Map Vlog all the way across on Facebook, Threads, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Phúc, it sounds like F-O-O-K, but it's actually P-H-U-C, Map, M-A-P, and Vlog, obviously V-L-O-G. Phúc Map Vlog, it means fat and happy in Vietnamese. And that's the name I've stuck with since about 2015. And if you do need my services, whether it's an MC for weddings, events, boxing, whatever it might be, you can send me a message on any of these platforms or send me an email, hurleyswork@gmail.com, H-U-R-L-E-Y-S work@gmail.com. Be happy to talk to you about it. I do try to get back to any fan who reaches out to me on social media. Might take a while going through the request inbox, but I always try to get back with somebody. It's when someone tries to have deep conversations with me that I can't always keep up, but I do try to answer everyone. So hopefully you get some value out of my channel. I do teach Vietnamese on my Instagram for free, over 500 lessons. You can just go through and learn 500 words in Vietnamese with a punchline. But I also teach it on my Patreon, which has a low monthly fee, no obligation. Try it out. There's over 100 lessons on there where I go into depth about my perspective, how I look at this word, how I look at this structure, and try to break it down to the best of my knowledge.
There you have it, everybody. Thank you so much. If you enjoy this podcast, make sure you leave it a like, share, and leave a comment. What do you think about this podcast? If you want to see me and Phúc chat again, leave it in the comment. But this podcast will be streaming on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube Podcasts, and all my social media, The Thai Life. Thank you, Phúc Map, for joining this podcast. I appreciate you. You always inspire me from day one, and you still do. Thank you so much for really representing the Vietnamese community and the Nail community. Can't wait to see what's next with you.
Thank you, brother. And hopefully the next collab we do will be in person.
I hope so too, man. I know, I'm a busy guy with dads. My focus is my kids right now, but this is awesome enough. And yes, definitely I want to see you in real life, in person.
If I got to come to your salon myself, then make it happen. Because I went to see Adrian in Louisiana.
I saw that.
I went to see Nailtech Studio in Orlando, so.
I saw that, so you're only missing me. But thank you so much, Phúc, man.
Yes,
I appreciate you more than anything for joining this podcast. Till next time.
Thank you, brother.